The Society is a 501c3, not-for-profit corporation. We are an all-volunteer organization. At the turn of the century, Fall River was a world leader in the cotton textile industry. One of the most wealthy, powerful cities in the world. And with that came its architectural and historical styles that aren't seen so thoroughly across the United States. We also are home to several parks designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, and he was the designer of Central Park in New York City. The mission of the Preservation Society of Fall River is to foster and promote awareness for historically and architecturally significant properties across the city. Preservation does not necessarily mean that every property needs to be saved in its most tiniest detail. But it does mean that there's a flavor of a neighborhood, a style of a property that should be recognized and appreciated. The value of preservation is in the creative economy, the creation of jobs, property values, the flavor of neighborhoods, and the quality of life. The Preservation Society is proud of our accomplishments. Most notably is the Historic District street signs, and that's something that we designed and purchased for the city. We've also redeveloped the historic house plaques, which designate historic properties across the entire city. It's not necessarily for a house that's been preserved. It's a plaque that designates you have an historic home or property. We feel it's important that any home that's considered historic is recognized in itself. The house plaques cultivate a sense of pride for the property owners and people who live in the neighborhoods and the out-of-towners that drive through and see it on the historic properties. And there are thousands across the city that are worthy of the plaque. We've been very involved with replanting and redesigning several of the Olmsted designed parks and greens. We've purchased and installed park benches, elm trees, and various plantings. We made them much more clean and useful for all the city's residents. We have various ongoing projects. One is the creation of a Fireman's Museum and the preservation of Anawan No. 6, which is the 1873 Firemen's and Police Station. The most compelling project for the Preservation Society is the creation of a 40C Local Historic District. A Local Historic District is a special designation that can only be determined by an individual community. It allows for actual preservation of a neighborhood or properties. It's a designation that's not afforded by the National Registry or State Registry. The boundaries for the proposed Local Historic District are Rock Street and High Street, surrounding French Street. It's a very small area in comparison to our National Registry District, which is one of the largest districts in the country. A 40C Local Historic District would serve to protect buildings key to our city's past and its future. The Preservation Society doesn't own every preservation initiative across the city, and many of those other initiatives are worthwhile, and we do support them. Notably, the Capitol Theater on South Main Street, the last standing theater of our heyday, well deserved of preservation, and that needs to come to fruition someday. Most of our members and volunteers just have a natural inclination and appreciation for the history, whether it's architecture or if it's an appreciation for the city itself. I think of Fall River as being Savannah, Georgia's northern sister. 15 miles upriver from the ocean, all this architecture and history is just waiting to be tapped into. The loss of appreciation for our history would lead to Fall River becoming just like any place else. The single biggest challenge for the Preservation Society is to foster and promote the awareness of Fall River's history and architecture.